Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, but most importantly, happy Friday to all of you out there, and welcome to Beyond the Sim. I'm Shaun Cole with my good buddy, Billy Strange. How you doing, Billy?
Very well.
Just a little parade wave.
Yes.
That is how you're doing.
That's, I am really wound up. I didn't sleep well. We have a big show for my band tonight, and I didn't sleep good, so I'm like, I feel a little out of sorts here.
Nerves? Is this nerves?
No. No, I'm just, I'm excited. I'm ready. There's no, worried about making mistakes or anything. It's just, I think we checked last night, they're 20 tickets away from selling out the venue. And the bands we're playing with, there's a good opportunity to grab some people and make them our fans too. So
awesome. Is this going to be the biggest?
More excited than anything.
Is this the biggest event you've played?
No. I've played physically to larger audiences before, but this one just new band, kind of trying to get your foot in the door, and this is a good opportunity.
All right. So, does the size of the venue affect your nerves as a performer?
Yes. Usually the smaller it is, the more nervous I would be.
Like the more intimate it is?
Yeah. That somebody's right up here.
Yeah.
It's a little disconcerting.
Now, in my real life racing world, I've never raced in front of anyone other than other racers because everything I've done is so small. I almost got myself 10 push-ups there. You've raced in some big limelights. Does the size of the crowd affect your nerves when you're getting ready to get in the car and get out there?
No, what would affect my nerves is when I would, because thankfully in dirt track racing, you usually have a pretty sizable crowd. That never really bothered me. What would make me more on edge is if I thought I had the potential to win. Then it was you got a good starting position. Or I've done the same thing where I feel really confident, felt really good in hot laps. And Placerville's a great example because Placerville, you actually go on the infield. And so it's one car at a time. Everybody is watching your every little move and screw up. So it's not really intimidating. It actually gets me a little pumped up because it's I don't know. I like that kind of pressure. I like the chance to prove that, this is what I belong doing or whatever the case may be. So I don't know. I like, especially if you're playing a music venue and you've got a bunch of people out there that are really getting into it. There's it's just like racing. And you just get this adrenaline surge and yeah, it's cool.
I have to confess, I am more I mean, the only comparative thing that I can talk about would be racing while streaming, where I do have an audience, but they're not physically there. And I think that's a big difference. I mean, I still have a lot of eyes perhaps watching me, and that does make me, for me, it intensifies the event.
That definitely stresses me out. That stresses me out.
I just hate when things go wrong and I'm on, and it's and sometimes it's not even my fault, but I still have to maintain some form of composure, which admittedly, if I was off stream, I wouldn't necessarily handle all things equally. I think, there's a certain accountability of being live, and I think the same thing is true in a band, right? I mean, if you're just practicing and there's no one there and you screw something up, you could, break your guitar if you wanted to. I mean, on stage,
stupid guitar.
On stage, you better have a backup or the set's over. All
Yeah,
right.
it's I don't know, it's part of that whole like there's nothing like doing it in the moment. So the most nervous I will tell you that I've ever gotten for anything is either racing RC cars or racing slot cars. And it's just something about having that person right there
Right.
next to you, stand right next to you, and you can see the other car
Right.
chasing you or you chasing it. It's completely different than being in a car or even, virtually racing. And you don't have that same level of, at least I don't have that same level of nervousness because my focus is so much out the front of the car.
I can relate to that going back to bicycle racing. Like even karting was somewhat small. Open wheeled stuff is somewhat small if it's in that club environment with no crowd. Where you maybe only have somewhere between 7 and 15 competitors, even. Uh, in some cases, I mean, I've been in 100 kart fields too. But going back to mountain bike racing days, because, and I think this would be comparative to RC or slot cars, where you'd be on our grid, the starting line,
Mm-hmm.
and there might be 1 to 200 mountain bikers all in their lycra, all geared out with their bikes, ready to go. Everyone's all full of adrenaline and nerves because the race hasn't started yet. And you're like elbow to elbow. And you're like next to the dudes you're going to be like
Mm-hmm.
fighting with in a moment. And I used to get a little out of my own head at those moments. Like that, I don't think I was the best. And maybe this will come full circle on this topic because it relates to racing. I don't think I was the best at that moment of keeping it together and, working on heart rate or working on breathing, working on concentration, focus, or even I would be so consumed looking around that I wouldn't even be like planning my first half mile, you know?
See, I ran track and cross country and I loved that. I actually like playing mind games with people. Like I would get up on the starting line and I'd let people line up first, like you guys do what you do. And then as we're getting ready, I would go out and around and I would do like I would call it a warm up, but really it was just to get my starting spot. I
Right?
would go around everybody and I do like a 5 yard to 7 yard kick, kind of get my legs, get the blood and the nerves all out. And then I would come back and I would just step right in front of somebody and take my position
Yeah.
on the
Awesome.
starting line. Cause this is my spot. You're going to have to move.
Awesome.
And I don't know. I liked that. I loved running track and cross country because there's a lot of mind games you could play with people. You speed up a little bit, you go around. I loved going through like the trees and stuff because if you're trying to break somebody, I would like pick up my pace as I would round a tree. And
Right.
when they get around the tree, all of a sudden you're another 2-3 yards away from them and
Right.
they just fall apart.
Like the minute
I
they
love
got
doing
into
that.
the braking zone, you were hard on the accelerator to make sure
Uh-huh.
you got a gap off that corner. I totally get it.
Yep.
I guess this does parallel. Now in that big environment, I never did well. I felt like it took me 15 minutes into the race to get to normal. I used to wrestle. Now this is a little different because that pre-game moment of nerves. I don't know how we got here, but you're on the opposite side of the mat, right? And you got your coaches and and he's over there, but it's one-on-one. Like, that is
Yep.
the only dude in the building. And so when I do wrestling meets like the county championships or whatever, you'd be in a massive auditorium packed. Like wrestling's a
Mm-hmm.
big sport. And none of that mattered. Like in that world, I didn't even know another person was in the building. Well, there was a handful of people in the building. It was all a blur. It was that dude. And, when it's like, that is the dude I'm
You get
about to go
laser
to war
focused.
with.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm like sizing him up from the minute I know who it is. Anyway.
Well, it's all applicable. I mean, when you sit down and you're going to do a multiplayer race, I think it's good. Like whenever I entered a sporting event like running track or cross country, or even, track and cross country was really a chess match, which is what I enjoyed. So I would come up with a strict game plan for myself. And if you're running a multiplayer event, I find that if there's going to be pit stops involved, I come up with a strategy beforehand. How long do the tires last before they fall off? How long can I hang on when the caution comes out, like for ovals? Am I going to pit? What's my pit window? Like, so keeping your focus, maintain, and thinking about all those things, not just blindly jumping and go, oh, I'll just follow everybody else. Like, you do yourself a favor by coming up with a game plan.
Sure.
And if that game plan doesn't work, then you realize what you did wrong. You watch other people and you learn from that.
I think the parallel to real life racing. So tonight we have our truck race at Kentucky. There are people who are BSing on chat up until that pace car actually rolls out. Maybe people run into the bathroom in that 2-minute break. But getting back to what you said, and I'm glad we are able to bring this full circle back to racing. But you have that moment from the minute you finished your qualifying, which if you jumped in early, could be a few minutes left to qual, that 2-minute to the grid, and then the pulling out. And that is the amount of time that you actually should be, if you were a professional, if you were a winner, right? This is what winners do. They would be double, triple checking all of the parameters. All right, 60-lap race, 45-lap window on fuel, 22 laps until the tires start to go bad.
Yep.
When is my scenario for last pit? Like, I need to know, like, if we get into the dicey race and there's 10 to go, am I pitting or not? Like, these are decisions that kind of can be planned for. Now, you might change on the fly. And then the other one I'm going to say is the moment that grid goes green is an opportunity to go in and maybe double check how much fuel they're going to put in the car. Maybe turn off that auto repair so it doesn't repair a minor scratch when you may need it later in the race. But who wants to do all of that on the fly? So the more prep you can do in those leading up moments could totally affect the outcome of your race. It's planning, it's preparation, it's that next level stuff that all teams do. As an individual, can you do it as a whole team,
Well, yeah, and I think it comes back to, being prepared, and then you got to put yourself in those scenarios to learn. You can run I disagree with the idea of turning just as many monotonous laps as you possibly can, because I think you're setting yourself up for failure, because then you'll be so hooked to one line that you won't be able to adjust your line.
Right.
You need to put yourself in racing scenarios to make mistakes, to learn from those things. And, we talk about having nerves. If you get nervous, to figure out how to calm yourself down, whether that's doing a few jumping jacks. I know that works for some people before they sit down in their rigs, or some deep breathing, whatever.
Push-ups, man. I love push-ups.
Yeah, push-ups are great. It just releases some of that, you build up and you're excited, you're nervous, you're amped up, and it levels it a little bit. I would listen to music before the A main, before I would get in the race car, if I had a good starting position, because it kind of distracted me from, I don't need to think about this so hard right now.
Right.
And I would listen to the music and then.
That was a big one in wrestling too. That was a big one in wrestling, was you'd have a Walkman in my day. And you'd have your favorite mixtape on there, the aggressive tape.
I remember walking home from school with my Walkman. Oh, man.
Big old yellow Sony Walkman.
Oh, you got the Sportsman.
Oh, yeah.
The one that was, what was it? You could get that one, like, water could hit it. You couldn't submerge it, but water could hit it, and it wouldn't.
It had a class.
Die.
I mean, it was like a GoPro case. That's how the Walkman was built.
Yep. So it wouldn't fly open and stuff. Yeah. I wasn't that cool. I didn't have that one.
Oh, I was kind of Walkman. That was like one of my things when I was young. So I had like a bunch of them, actually. I had like some fancy ones that my buddy I had a friend who's Japanese and went to Japan every year. And back then, Japanese electronics didn't come to America. No. It wasn't quite the same. And he'd come back with like little Game Boy type things and Walkmans. And I'd always give him money and be like, dude, I want a cool, and he'd bring home. Anyway, okay, we don't have a lot of news today. Anyway.
No, we don't have a lot of news. That's why we're tangents.
Billy, what have you been up to this week?
Really, it's been all hands on deck for about the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Getting ready for the show, making sure we're all rehearsed and what we're going to do. And then I finished my new PC build.
Lunatic Fringe. Dave Blair, you just like gave me chills up my spine. Favorite movie? My favorite movie for a solid decade was Vision Quest. With Matthew Modine, I think is his name. And Lunatic Fringe was his pump up music. And I actually used that same music too because it was...
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, no, it wasn't a coincidence. It was, I like that song. It worked for him in the movie. And
right.
Oh, I love that movie. I'd watch it right now if it was on. All right, sorry, go on. So all hands on deck, prepping for the big show.
Right, so that, and then I finished my new PC build, and so that's been this week of getting things loaded, getting settings going, and I learned something. My racing rig is different than my editing rig, so I have an external hard drive. In my old external hard drive, I just use wireless headphones. So I plugged those in to a 2.0 USB in the front, and then I would plug in my external hard drive into the front. Never had a problem. I get this PC. It doesn't have stuff coming out the front. It's out the top. And I was playing, and all of a sudden, audio just turned off. 5-7 minutes later, audio turned back on. What the fuck is going on? I mean, I'm losing my shit because I can't figure out what the hell. I'm trying all kinds of stuff, disabling things. I can't figure it out. Finally, I look it up, and apparently, external hard drives emit noise that can mess with 2.4 gigahertz wireless that's plugged into a USB 3.0. And it will shut down and then turn it back on and do all these crazy things. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Sure enough, I unplugged the external hard drive. Completely fine.
Whoa.
So if you ever have that problem, just make sure you don't have an external hard drive plugged in right next to your
when we
wireless headset.
When we are giving companies a hard time about their games not working well or their hardware even, that's the thing. It's like their controlled group can't possibly test all of these scenarios, and sometimes they're the most absurd, unexpected little things that cause a total failure, because without that you're dead, right? I mean, anyway, that's a trip. What a trip.
Yeah, Double Clip says I ended up buying a powered USB hub to do exactly what he said. He says had the same issue, got a powered USB hub and run it a couple feet to the side. So that was my experience with that, but everything else seems to be working really well. And then I helped the guys I've been helping do AI for some of their oval stuff in Assetto Corsa. I helped them do a couple more. And then I just barely got to try the new touring cars for Race Room.
Oh, you tried them? Awesome.
So I only got to try two. I tried the Alpha and the Audi because I was just going down the list. Really like the Audi so far. That one's a lot of fun. Still has a lot of the, front wheel drive characteristics, but you almost have to think about it a little bit in reverse, where in a rear wheel drive car, you would have on throttle oversteer. You're spinning the tires. This, you get on throttle understeer. So you kind of have the same thought process goes in mind, pedal the car, don't be so aggressive, wait for it to get traction. So the front wheel drive car tends to be a little bit more point and shoot than a rear wheel drive car, but I kind of use the same thought process as, don't hammer the throttle, otherwise you're going to spin out.
Right.
Well, this is don't hammer the throttle, otherwise you're just going to push off the track.
Right.
have a little, patience with the car. But the Audi was a lot of fun. The Alpha is tricky. It's not as refined feeling, which is nice because there was a significant difference between the two. And you may be able to mellow that out with setup or anything. I was just trying them right out the gate. And so I need to go through the rest of the cars. Hopefully I'll have a review done next week.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had some other projects, and then with the way building the PC and then getting ready for the band, like I just had to change some of the projects I had for last week and this week, but hopefully everything smooths out.
Right on, right on.
So, how about you?
I've had a crazy week. As far as driving, it's been very weird because right now I'm testing out 2 different wheel stands, which has me just not even close to driving in my setup. Not even close. And not faulting them at all, but I mean, one thing about driving with confidence is kind of having a setup that you're very, very, very comfortable in. And so right now I have things so out of whack that I've had a hard time doing anything super serious. But at the same time, because I'm trying to get footage of the rigs in action, I'm trying to try them out in a nice variety of things, some rallycross or some dirt trucks, and then some road racing, some oval racing. I'm trying to throw a good selection at them in order to test them at their best. But it just means that I've been all over the place. So I've been very non-focused. Then I guess the highlight of the week was I did a coaching session with Chris Phillips.
Okay.
Who I want to find out. I'd like someone else to find out if he got it. Maybe he'll be too nice and be like, "Oh no, it was great." It's like, well, I really want to know. Did you learn? Because when I look at the lap times, there was no change. However, there are a lot of things that we were working on and a lot of spots that I was trying to get him to do something different. Didn't see a tangible result in the 1 hour that we worked together, but we were at Spa. So Spa takes, 3.5 minutes to get around. So it's not like you're clicking off laps super quick to really be able to check. And one mistake can ruin a lap. So where it could have been an improvement 90% of the lap, one mistake could make it not show on the time chart. So it was hard. And then Chris had to leave abruptly when we were done. So I didn't talk to him since. I go back and forth on the whole topic of coaching and what can and cannot be coached in sim racing. I think it's very similar to real life coaching. I think that you can tell someone what to do and how to do it, but will their brain let them? We've talked with pro drivers who had to use their left foot to hold the right foot down to make sure they didn't lift. It's hard.
I've had to talk to myself.
And,
it also depends on the person, because I know in having different crew chiefs, I was okay. And then I got one crew chief and he was, however he said it, he wasn't really saying anything different, but the way that he presented it to me was just, it was like, oh, I get it. Light went off in my head and I instantly felt more aggressive and more comfortable in the car. And so sometimes it's just even the person, and it's not that, the person before was doing anything wrong. It's just sometimes our personalities don't gel. I think anybody can learn and be coached. I think sometimes it's hard to find how that person learns,
right?
Because we may not be familiar with all that. And a lot of people, quite honestly, it's not so much getting them fast. It's, are your settings correct? Are you doing weird stuff with the wheel? If you're changing your degrees of rotation all the time, or if you're constantly messing with your FOV, and all those things make it so you don't have a stable structure to build upon.
Right.
And if you've done, I maintain that if a sim is doing it correctly, if you start messing with degrees of rotation too much, you are changing the way the car will react. And I always say start if you're having problems. If you're not having problems, then you don't have to worry about this. But if you're probably, no, I did not do Dakar AT and I haven't had a chance. But if you're having a problem, start at square one. Put your wheel at 900 and let the sim, like an iRacing or something like that, let the sim tell you how it's supposed to feel. And then you need to adapt to that. And then once you get everything squared away and you're running consistent, solid, great lap times, okay, now I want to try a little different, a smaller degree of rotation and see if I like that. But if you're bouncing all over the place, or if your settings aren't right in your PC and you're, maybe you got VSync on or something, and, it's good to start from square one, and then you can make adjustments. And often I find that a lot of people aren't, it's not even their driving, it's all the stuff. I mean, it was the same thing in Slockers. I can't tell you how many times, somebody says to do something like, why are you doing that? Well,
Right.
because so and so does it.
Right.
But did they explain why they're doing that? Do you understand the reasoning behind what they're doing? Well, they're faster. I'm all, you don't need to do that though. That's not something you need to worry about. What you need to worry about is the fundamental basics. Making sure you're, like in Slockers, making sure your car rolls free, making sure you've got a
Sure.
basic weight set, making sure your tires are glued correctly.
Sure.
You can practice all you want with bad settings in Sims, just like Slockers, and it won't do you any good.
Somebody could be a complete nightmare for no other reason than the wrong field of view. The other thing I'm going to say about what you're saying is, I like when it comes to setup on a car, I don't do much setup change until I know what the car is really doing. Is it loose because I'm driving it wrong, or is it loose because it's loose?
Do not drive one lap and then go, oh, this is the worst thing, and then go in and start messing with a bunch of stuff. Don't
exactly.
do that.
And then when I get to that point where I'd actually notice the changes, because now I'm comfortable and I know what the car is doing predictably wise, I think all those changes you make to wheel settings, graphic settings, are very similar. It's like making a major change to your setup.
Sure.
And, you're now adjusting to that and trying to figure out if it was better or worse. And you need to kind of isolate these things to get them right to that point. And another parallel for those who are doing it wrong and just wondering why it doesn't go, like when I got into RC planes, for example, I built and crashed 3 or 4 planes.
You're a brave man. RC plane. That's what I worry about.
So my 5th plane was beautiful. It came out so This is back when you actually built your own plane, not these foam things you just buy and fly. And it came out so perfect that I got afraid. I didn't want to crash it. So I stored it for a couple years, and then finally I hired a coach, like one of these guys who can teach you how to fly, a little, dual remote kind of thing. And I handed him my plane, and I'm like, look at this beautiful plane, right? And before it went in the air, and this gets back to field of view, steering rotation, and all that, he's like, oh yeah, well, you have way too much throw in your aileron. You have way too much throw in your elevator. You have way too much throw in your rudder. And it was like before my bird went into the plane, he went through all of the systems to make sure that it was correct. Before my bird went into the air, not my bird went into the plane.
I was like, you put a bird in your plane?
I like a pilot.
Some weird level. That's almost cannibalistic.
Well, I want it to be real. It can't be simulated. That guy's got to be flying the plane, right?
Well, I like what David said. I think we should do this. Rather than worrying about all that stuff, we should just buy one of those cheating direct drive wheels, and then everything's solved.
Oh yeah, you press the magic button. They do have a button. It's an option. You have to press the button, and then you get magic
wheel
settings.
Centers itself that changes everything.
Yeah, it's like perfected AI through the wheel.
Incoming direct drive hate. Here we go.
Kaboom. Kaboom. All right. So yeah, coaching, and then I coached Chris a little bit. And then what I didn't do was prepare for the Indy 500 that's on Saturday for Lionheart. And yeah, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble there. I don't know what I'm going to do. Today's Friday. Tomorrow's the race. I'm in bad shape. And then working on these reviews. So should be to the point I've got all my B-roll filmed. We did the live unboxings, and now I will get my script filmed over the weekend and get those pieces out like Monday, Tuesday, I'm hoping. So that's been my week. Not as much on track in a competitive way as I would like. So as I'm sitting here thinking about tonight's race at Kentucky, I'm super excited.
I'm bummed I'm going to miss it.
Indy 500, I'm not quite sure. Do push-ups to prep. Okay, thank you. I thought I owed push-ups. And then Joe busted you. I was like, do I have to do Billy's push-ups?
Yeah, you got it. Well, if that's the case, let me develop Tourette's real quick. Yeah, I'm bummed I'm going to miss the race. I had such a fun race last time. I was like, oh God, they land on the same night.
Yeah, that sucks.
Sucks.
And we had a week off, but that was because
I know.
of the 4th, right? That's why we took last week off. All right, that makes sense. Do push-ups make you go faster?
They do indeed.
It's proven. It's fact. All right, so what's going on in the world of sim racing? Not a whole lot to talk about right now.
No, we were kind of scrounging for things. Luckily, Assetto Corsa Competizione gave us the wonderful gift of another update. Version 1.0.6.
There it is. I lost the update. There we go.
In general, fix a potential crash when resuming career championships. So they've just done some minor bug fixes, reworked some audio, so their bank loading logic. Down at the bottom, they did some physics tweaks to the AMG excessive fuel consumption. And then the fixed setup UI showing excessive blistering and grading values. So again, nothing... I didn't see anything major. There was one that I saw that was kind of interesting where, gameplay. Sprint race driver assignment now matches real life rules. Drivers are designated to a Q1, Q2, R1, and R2 based on the license. So I'm assuming that's the license that they actually hold.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do the career, I believe each driver holds, certain licenses. And I think you yourself have a license, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So again, nothing here that makes me really want to jump back in and try it again. I'm looking for a more substantial A fix B update to some of the systems that they have.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Kind of with you. I would like to be inspired.
So
yep,
that's good.
Hopefully, we're not too far away from that.
Mm-hmm.
What else? They also had their first competition. I guess their special events winners, season 1. So there's a little graphic on their Twitter page here, congratulating Paolo. Oh, I don't have my disclaimer, do I? No, we still don't have that on this show. Do I? Nope, I don't see my disclaimers. I'm about to butcher some names. Paolo Moya, Patrick Selva, and Philip Simard.
Did you
Arno
put up your
Lacombe.
disclaimer?
I couldn't find it. I don't have it on this one. That was the number 30 hot lap in the Bentley at Silverstone. Number 31 hot stint was at Spa on the Porsche 991 GT3. Philip Simard, who took third in that number 30. Tomas
Philip or Felipe?
Felipe.
Philip? Maybe it's Philip. Maybe you're right.
And Nils Najux, look at that. I know. He's a longtime sim racer, coming in third. Number 32, Super Pole, Barcelona, McLaren 650S, Arnaud Lacombe. So we are... No, he hadn't won yet. I already said his name. And here's a great gamer tag. If you're going to use a gamer tag and make it look like a name, duct tape. I like that. And then Patrick Selva, who actually was second place in number 30. And then 33, I'm going long on this. Hot stint at Brands Hatch in the Audi R8. Duct tape comes for the win. Oh, I'm a new fan. I rarely applaud a gamer tag, but I do like duct tape. Steve Strello and Balls. I'm not sure what that's about. So anyway, so the competition aspect of Assetto Corsa. I mean, the one thing you could take away from this is all those butchered names by me. The other thing you could take away from that is the fact that we never saw this from Assetto Corsa. So when we do add the word competizione, hey, you know what? You've got 12 drivers being congratulated on their, job well done in the competition version of this game. So that's kind of cool. Duct tape has a lot of grip in the turns. Hey, Bill Fletcher, welcome to the show. Bill actually made that load cell mod that I tested recently for the Thrustmaster pedals.
Ooh.
And I have a little bit of news that I'll talk about on Monday, some new options from him coming off of that review and some feedback from people and all that. So,
nice.
What else?
Cody's released a blog. The main thing is they're talking about Dirt Rally 2.0, and version 1.6 of the game was released earlier this week, featuring a gigantic amount of bug fixes and updates. based on the feedback that we have given them. And then they've also, wait, this seems rather untimely because they're talking about the 911, but this is from yesterday. But they did an audio update for the launch of Delta S4. 50. And they gave us some screenshots of whales. So that's fun. Looks exciting for those of us that like whales and Dirt Rally.
I guess that's like real life audio recorded and put into the game.
I know that they've done it before where they've kind of put a placeholder in because of their release schedule. And then they go back and put when they are actually able to get the correct audio, then they will put the correct audio in there. So you can take that for however you see it.
Somebody just asked me about WRC8, and no, I don't have any news, but what I do have is the head marketing guy and project manager card. I will contact him right after this show.
Hey, the truck game releases next week.
That's right. I need to get that, and I want to get the Tour de France. I've been watching the Tour de France every day.
Slacking.
And yeah, I'm really behind. You know what? I had a few side things that I've been doing this week too, like cleaning up live stream stuff that'll be debuted tonight. There's a little teaser actually on this show right now. But yeah, just trying to clean things up and look a little more pro. This show has a good look to it. I like the way we did our graphics, but there's no cohesiveness in all my other streams. Everything's all different every time I go live. So I've tried to clean up the shop a lot, and that took a lot of time as well. All right.
And if you like self-flagellation, F1 2019, you can catch all the people that praise it right here. You can go to their blog, click on the link, and they've put the best bits of the reviews into an accolades trailer.
Were you featured?
I was trying to hold it together for that one. I suspect that I am not somehow in that trailer.
I don't think I made
unless
it
they took the chunk out that I said it looks nice.
If you take tidbits, I mean, I said some good things about it.
Yeah, I said some nice things about it. But, I don't think anybody remembers that part, but that's fine.
And then they talk about their Grid Race for Glory trailer. During the week, I saw an article that like really kind of pointed a finger at Grid in the way that you and I have, and it was questioning, like, which way are you guys going? Because looks like you're trying to please a little too many people or too wide a group with one game title. Because you and I can say what we want about F1 2019, but I still might argue that they might have hit a home run as far as who they were actually targeting for sales of the game. Forget the esport, forget that part. I feel like Grid, they're really trying to like make the sim racers like, oh yes, this is going to be a new sim, Project Cars rival. Anyway, I saw an article by another magazine who literally was just like questioning exactly the things that we've said and brought into question about Grid.
Yeah, I thought Grid, the original Grid, was a celebration of more of car culture, and it included racing in that. Like I said, I don't believe there's any drifting in this, which I know Devin was saying at the last show I thought that was one of the standout features in the original Grid. And this reminds me more of Grid Autosport than the actual Grid 1 or Grid 2 kind of walked that weird line too, though, I feel. Because I don't know, there's some elements in here that remind me of Grid 2. So, I don't know. I'll just try to take it for what it is. Whenever it releases, hopefully they pick a lane and they stay in that lane. I'm not a fan of like going, they kind of weave in and out of this. Is it more on the hardcore side? Is it more on the arcade side? Like it just ends up being a mess at that point.
Here's another one that cracks me up. It's just like, anyway, because I've seen it like a dozen times now, but here it is in this blog as well. The infamous Raven West Motorsport will be back in the new Grid.
I'm like, I get it. I understand. It's been I believe it's been in every grid game. But did we really develop any sort of attachment or feelings to the nefarious Raven West? I don't.
I mean, what if they weren't there? I mean, oh my.
I didn't. I didn't even think about it until they said it. So I don't know. Whatever.
Oh, I don't think they're sending me a copy, by the way.
Well, you know what? When they did what was it, Pro Race Driver 2, they had your guy that was kind of your crew chief, and then they had the lady that was your manager or whatever. Like, I could understand if you were doing another one of those games and they came back. For those of us that played those games, there was more of an attachment to those characters because they did something.
Right.
Right?
Right. You interacted with them.
Yeah, Raven West is this like anomalous group of pseudo dirty drivers at the, that were some of the best in the games or whatever. And it's kind of like that. There's no.
Maybe they gave them faces.
Raven West.
Maybe so F1 2019, when you start your career in F2, that one guy, I can't remember who it was, but they turn him into your rival right away. He's talking all sorts of smack to you and telling you to just lay down and take second kind of, stuff. And maybe Raven West has a face, and maybe they've included, and this is where they would hit a home run for me with the title, by the way. Where you finish the race and all of a sudden that driver from Raven West comes over and pushes you, and it's like, what was with that pass, or
He's getting a brawl.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we could totally turn it into Fight Night at that point. I love Fight Night.
AABB.
Awesome.
Oh
yes, that would be fantastic. Turn it into Fight Night in the pits. Man, that would be cool.
It'd be the best driving game ever. I'm just saying.
I like it. I like where we're going with this. Okay. New ideas.
All right. Gran Turismo had a video that is so worth watching. Oh, shoot. Sorry if I just blew everybody's ears out. I might have. This was a head-to-head battle in the manufacturer series that went on. So what we're seeing in this video is both camera angles of both drivers, and then they had it superimposed over the moment of contact. So you can see one guy driving the other guy off, one guy throwing his hands up in the air like, what was that? And now the other guy is going to respond like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I thought it was a priceless video. We talk about emotions. That's been one of our topics. Mm-hmm. We were talking about starting line. Oh, look, these guys are talking some serious smack now. The offended guy is not letting go. The offender, it's just like, whatever. It's racing. My brother and I watched Senna, the movie, the other day.
Oh, okay.
There's moment when they're both in the Marlboro cars, him and Prost.
Mm-hmm.
And Senna comes in very late. But, boy, he almost was front wheel to front wheel with Prost when Prost came over. And my brother and I almost got in a big old argument because my brother's not a big Senna fan. And he's like, look at that. And I'm like, this is an argument that me and Billy have all the time. Position, And, boy, he let an entire car get inside of him, not just a wheel. I mean, right. We talk about what you see. He saw him because...
he knew he was there. There's no...
And,
you're not that good and you don't know that somebody's there.
Anyway, that kind of reminds me...
You are that good because you want to control the outcome of what happens next.
Yes. Anyway, that was... Senna was a dive bomber. Well, and he made that same exact pass on the guy who had gone in front of him. So Senna took on some damage. Prost retired. Senna went through the chicane thing. I mean, the emergency runoff.
Mm-hmm.
Went into the pits, got a new wing, came out in second, ran down the guy who was leading. I can't remember who it was, and made the exact same pass in the exact same spot as where he had gotten into it with Prost. Anyway, it was. I watched that movie a long time ago, but it was kind of cool watching it again after a long time because I don't know. Sure. It's like some things, your perception even changes with time of the same movie. Anyway, no news to talk about today, people.
Yeah, I like that movie. That was a good movie. I think obviously it skews one way, but I enjoyed that movie. That was a good
Sure.
one.
Yeah, it was really entertaining. I mean, you know, I think anybody who's a Senna fan will come away with one interpretation of the movie, and anybody who doesn't like Senna or questions the podium or the plateau that or the platform that people put him on upon might come away with a totally different impression.
I was a weird kid. I actually really liked both. I liked both of them. So when they were on the same team, it was very difficult. Or when they were
Yes.
even when they were racing together on the track, I think part of me always identified with Prost being a little bit more methodical, a little bit more doctor-esque
Right.
about his approach to racing, and obviously Senna had much more flair and
It's kind of similar to like
determination and kind of,
the James Hunt Nicky Lauda.
yeah.
A very similar dynamic between that rivalry, where one is just sort of the charismatic party guy, and the other guy is super clinical and maybe even a touch of safety in it. When do you think team orders really started coming into play in racing?
I think they've been there for a long time.
Because they certainly didn't seem to have much. Well, then again, not both drivers remained with the team.
I was gonna say I don't think they played well together, and I think they very much ignored a lot of the team stuff. I think if putting another person on their team, they would expect the other person to be a team player, but they're gonna do both of them. I think
Right.
they're gonna do what they need to do to be the best,
Yeah.
and that they're I. It's kind of crappy to say, but you have to be a little selfish to a degree in order to excel in that kind of thing. You have to worry about, this is my spot on the track. You better take this from me. I'm just going to roll over and give it to you.
Right. Nope.
So,
Nope.
I think it just kind of pushes that direction, and you'll see people that are great team players, and a lot of those great team players don't really get the great recognition that I think they probably should if they were on, let's say, a single car team and they were allowed to just drive. So, I don't know.
Double Clutch says engineers are still trying to figure out Senna's stabby throttle technique.
So that comes from go-karts.
Well, and like I was trying to explain that working with Chris, I was trying to explain to him that technique a little bit. Like, this is how you induce rotation and then catch it simultaneously. The other thing that I remember, weird things. Go ahead.
Real quick, not to cut you off, but I just wanted to put this in there just before you get going. Nicky Team does the same thing. If you watch him drive, he does a lot of the stabby thing, and I've watched several people that a lot of it is from the two-stroke carts because you've got to keep that thing up.
Right.
And, I think that's where a lot of that technique comes from.
Yeah. When used well, it works.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to, never mind.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's totally fine. All right, so I was gonna say, it's funny when they look back on great drivers and certain things they did that was different than the other guys in the grid. I remember when people used to talk about how Schumacher would actually put the car into neutral to roll through certain corners, and it was like, man, that's like a no-no in racing to let the car ghost ride.
Engine braking, yeah.
But it was one of the things that he was supposedly did on like long 180-degree corners was let the car roll. And it was like, wow, that's
interesting,
fascinating. So yeah, I think the pros have their tricks.
I like the Dick Trickle driving technique where he would bust out a smoke while he was racing.
Yeah, Stan says you got to keep it on the pipe. That's right. You can't, on certain types of things that have bad recovery, you have to keep them on the pipe.
That was something that I had to get adjusted to coming from racing a big car, then running big road courses with karts, is to not, if you're going to squeeze, that squeeze better be quick. Otherwise you tend to do that more, because of, if you hold it in that mid position, you'll burn the engine.
Yeah.
You can't do this slow, long thing. You've got to be, you either I was running a shifter car just like you. So you just grab the next gear, which kind of lugs the motor, but you can keep your foot in it all the way, or you play with the throttle through the corner.
It's one of the reasons in sim racing that I actually have a hard time with the cars that don't like RPM. A lot of these new cars like really low RPM,
Low, yep.
And it's like, wow, I don't do that well. I like being on the pipe. It's the world I've lived in. It's the only world I know, and it's the most enjoyable moment in racing for me is when the car is just at that absolute peak. And
There's
just singing,
nothing cool. There's nothing cooler than hearing something. I mean, in the sprint car, when that thing is digging and up in the RPMs, I mean, we were turning safely 8,800 with it.
I'm getting all emotional just thinking about it.
God, it's so beautiful. But you would get on it, and man, that thing it does all these grunts, and then the RPMs spike because the tires lose traction and then they grab traction again. The car does the same thing. I was so not prepared for a 125 shifter to and it just keeps pulling. You just keep hearing that freaking RPM climb and climb and climb, and I'm just like, holy cow, is this thing ever gonna?
Yeah.
You kind of learn where that power band is, where it continues to go, but it falls off the other side. But initially, I don't know where that is.
It just sounds like it's going to keep going.
Yeah, you have this question like, is this thing ever going to stop screaming?
Joe, I like the pipe, Shaun Cole 2019.
Taking several different ways.
Oh, too funny, too funny.
Beyond the Sim is not responsible for any interpretations of that.
Oh my. All right, Project Cars, they're talking about the Logitech G Esport, and they have a little video of last week, the second race in their qualifier going on. And I'm hitting play to see it, and the racing looks phenomenal actually from what I've seen. But what struck me funny, because we've clowned it, laughed at it, the NASCAR heat thing. It looks so silly when they have this like little tiny mini pack of cup cars running around in an oval, big giant oval. Here we are at Daytona with 12 cars, right? And it just looks silly. And this competition is pretty restricted. So what you have, and this was true because they did that in the last one, you're talking about relatively small grids, but good racing going on. So anyway, if you want to see a little highlight video of race number 2 in the USA qualifier, or I guess it's week number 2, really, or round number 2, we should call it. But some cool action going on, and not a giant field, but everybody in those McLarens. And who's that announcer?
I can't hear it, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but Sauce won that race in 250. Sauce, followed closely by the Zebra 94. And not to be outdone, finishing the podium is Airstrike 1.
So this kind of proves your point. If you're watching, when you're watching this, what do they focus on? They do a little bit of the front, and then where do they go? They go back to like, what is it, 5th?
For the side-by-side action?
The play of the race. They're back there with these guys. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's like 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
That's why you don't do small groups of cars. That way, if you're doing a broadcast, you want the ability to show action. And if you're just constantly showing the front guy run away from everybody because you don't have enough people on the track to promote some sort of an on-track battle, you're doing yourself a disservice. That's what we saw with the McLaren Shadow deal last year.
Yep.
At least there's 12 here. I would like to see more than that because, again, it would add a larger dynamic to the race.
Yep.
But, it looked like it was good racing. I mean, the little clips that they're showing there. So,
yeah,
that's good.
Now, as we say that, I mean, you could argue that Formula One has a relatively small grid compared to...
Formula One has all kinds of interesting issues. So,
all right. Now, this is starting to become a beat a dead horse topic by Shaun Cole.
Sweet. Can I grab you a soapbox?
Alfa Romeo adds E-Rock champion and F1 Esport runner-up to the team. All right, so here's a picture of them adding a member of the team. Here's another article. Racing Point announces new drivers for third F1 Esport season. So next week is the draft, as far as my memory serves me. And this is something that we talked about a bunch of times. I'm getting very confused about where the line is being drawn as we are getting into what I am going to consider the professional ranks of sim racing. And part of making a pro is making a living doing it. Like, okay, so I had a joke way back when I kind of retired from working when I did my shifter karting. So I called one of my old-time IndyCar mechanic buddies to brag, and I'm like, hey, he's like, what are you up to? I'm like, I'm a pro driver. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I race every weekend, and I don't have a job. That makes me a professional driver, right? And anyway, we argued over that point for a little while, and then it finished with not until you have some trophies. So I got a couple little dinky trophies. I don't know if I could ever say that I was professional at all. And it was my own dime, so that's really not. But anyway, as we get to this pro rank, professional sport does have kind of like restrictions on how players are moved about and when and how you acquire players, and do they have to go through the program or the draft in the case of certain cases, or how many imports can you bring in even. The other thing that racing is known for is silly season, right? That time at the end of the last season, before the next season, when you have drivers changing teams, maybe even changing disciplines of racing. Maybe they lost their Formula One ride and they moved to IndyCar. Maybe, they or any kind of change like that. But what I'm seeing here are teams making a lot of moves that have nothing to do with the F1 draft. And I don't know how that's going to play out. The other thing that kind of goes with this, and it's just the unknown that bothers me, and I guess with maybe more research, maybe it's more clear, but I don't think it is, by the way, because I've talked to people and it's like, no, it doesn't seem like it's that clear. I said it the other day, but we were talking about the new team. Well, I was talking about the new team in the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze series, and how they're just like another sort of fantasy team. And so when I see, I'll just say Slip Angle Motorsports, which I think that's the team that Ray Alfella used to be on. I'm not sure if he's still affiliated with the team, but now he works or drives for Wood Brothers. And you have Wood and Roush and JR, and you have some of the real teams, but then you have these made-up teams. And I'm still upset at the fact that not only were we displaced...
They are not made up. They are real esports teams. How dare you?
But not only were we displaced by real teams, which was one of the fears I had way back when. So rather than it be Team Redline dominating the F1 Esports series, it's, Mercedes or Ferrari or McLaren, And it's like, well, wait, Redline has been the dominant esport team for decades. Multiple, 20 plus years, I think. Certainly over 10, but I think it's closer to 20. And they're now going to be nothing but like a management team, a management firm for drivers who are being parlayed into other teams. Anyway, these two articles just add to my confusion, add to my frustration, and add to the big question mark that I'm putting on motorsport esport, even though I do believe that we are bubble proof. But there's a lot to still be worked out and a lot of ruffled feathers that are still going to happen with me maybe leading the way. And maybe I'm making more out of it than it matters because we're only talking about a very small amount of drivers, right? This isn't happening to the masses. This is happening to the top 100. Anyway, any thoughts on that? I got to go to the bathroom. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on that, Billy? I swear, next show, we are going to have an intermission at 10 o'clock. That's just going to be the new... Yep, I'm going to hit a button.
We pitch some elevator music.
Yes, absolutely. We'll play some highlights from the week or something. I'll be right back.
I like the Optimus Devin and Spatial both call out the Optimus Prime. Autobots roll out. That's funny. What else has happened this week? I don't know if I really have a problem. Shaun gets all worked up about this. I don't know if I really have a problem with them doing it, but I get what he's saying. I think that it's a natural evolution where we're going with this. I think that those teams were, once money started rolling in, I don't think those teams were destined to stay the teams that they were. Yeah, competition caution, Stan says. That's what we need. I swear we should actually, this is kind of awkward. We should actually have some sort of intermission music while he makes a pit stop. But I think the natural evolution of infusing a bunch of money into this area of esports, I think causes some friction. I agree with him on in one sense that you're getting rid of the old guard, you're getting rid of things that helped take esports to that next step, but it also has to evolve. I don't know that maybe the reason these people are getting, or these esports teams are getting involved, is because they don't still have enough real world interest from teams. You know, not all the NASCAR teams are willing to jump on board, so they have to take submissions from these esports teams. I'm not sure what the deal is there, but I think I was explaining, you know, to your point, I understand your point, but I also see it as an evolutionary step because of the money that's being infused. And you have, especially those established esports teams, they have money already in those workings. So I don't know. It's, we could be the, you know, get off my lawn crowd, but I could also understand the, you know, take the next step forward as well.
Yeah, I think about teams that develop their drivers. So if you're like a Apex Racing, you know, or even like an Avid Chronic Racing, you might find some drivers that need some more work, but they have that skill, right? And so you might invest a fair amount of time into those people to then just push them on to something else. But I guess if you were to look at any other sport, I mean, you know, if you were, you know, you play for a AAA baseball team, that's what they're doing. They're grooming you, right? They're
yeah.
And when you get good and just when you become an integral part of that team is probably about when you get called up. And so now they've put all this work. They finally got that third baseman who can hit the home runs, and now he's gone. So I guess it could be comparable to that. And I guess what'll happen at some point is if it continues to grow, these main teams will have to have support teams, just like they do in real life. Because they won't feeders. And they'll run multiple programs of how they get talent, whether it be a draft, which in racing, draft really isn't something that happens in racing. I can't think of any drafting. The only draft that ever happens is in a spec series where they draw for cars or something like that. But there's no draft. It's all independent hirings, unlike other sports. You know, most other sports, you're contract tracked and much more structured. So they're actually kind of trying to force something on motorsport that motorsport isn't accustomed to having also. And the other problem with the draft is it acts as though they have all of the best drivers right here. Right? Meanwhile, it's like, well, what about that kid that they know about who's running some other sim, but he's showing those Gregor Hutu, Martin Kroenke kind of talent, you know, and nobody even knows who he is because he's just running in some, you know, Polish racing series or German racing series. I'm not trying to pick any. I just randomly pulled a country's name. But, and I think that's, you know, whereas team sport, you have so many more people involved that you do have a good pool to draw from through drafting mechanisms or things like that. Anyway, okay, it's just something that David, I keep my eye on.
David brings up a small a point here that he says, if I'm correct, Alfala and other peak drivers are still with their original teams, which is correct. Yes. They technically are, but I don't believe they do any sort of promoting of those teams. And I think that's what Shaun's speaking to is, again, you had these stepping stones that put esports into the area that it is now. And it's just, I can understand it's a little unfortunate that we still don't recognize, if we're going to recognize straight esports teams instead of real, you know, race teams like the Wood Brothers and JR and stuff like that, then why aren't we also recognizing the teams that help build it up to where it is now.
Yep. Yep. And especially in
And
the e-peak one where you have just a few real life teams and then a few gaming teams that were then put ahead of the existing motorsport NASCAR E teams that already existed. And that's where I'm really, and I think everything else kind of comes from that first point of frustration. At least in the F1 esport, all of the teams are there. So it's like kind of hard to argue that one because even Ferrari's there now. And no offense to Redline, but if I could be considered a Redline driver or a Ferrari driver, I'm going to go with the prancing horse. Yeah, you know, I mean, that would be quite an honor to be listed as a Ferrari driver. You know, that's a short list.
And we know that they don't really have a lot of involvement in the team, right? But they do hold some sort of vested interest in the team. So again, Wood Brothers, JR, they hold something of value in those teams. Otherwise, there would be no reason to be affiliated with it. So even though they're not,
right.
You know, Wood Brothers isn't there in their developing setups and everything, it's the perception from the outside world. And when you see, here's Wood Brothers Racing and here's JR Motorsports, and then here's whatever esports team.
Right.
It just...
Now, the other thing is,
I don't know,
luck of the draw in the case of when they did the Visa Vegas race, they had the teams were randomly given drivers. Okay, I think I can't remember how they distributed, but all of the sim racers were affiliated with the real esport, with the real Formula E teams. Well, there was a lot of luck in terms of some teams were like, whatever, yeah, that guy. Here's our jersey. Cool, good luck. Other teams were like, hey, come to this promotional event with us and drive a Formula E car. And, you know, and it was like, so it was kind of unfortunate because if you got drafted or selected to the right team, it was this like dream, you know, beyond the competition, how much money could be won. Versus other guys, it was sort of like, well, whatever. That was just in name and jersey and paint job alone. And that kind of like, to me, I was like, oh, that would really suck. Because if you got picked by them or ended up on that team, you know,
they don't really care.
and I think the same might be true in the NASCAR one for iRacing, because let's face it, if you are a JR Motorsport driver and you overperform, that just might get Dale to be like, hey, what the hell? Let's put him in a late model and see what he can do, because he embraces sim racing. He believes in sim racing. He's kind of just pretty much a generous person when it comes to those type of opportunities for people who he has faith in. Whereas another team, it might not be any more than just name and anything. And it could, you know, it kind of sucks to have that be this secondary random luck aspect of what is supposed to be competition. Competition to me is supposed to be very pure, winner take all, or winner take the biggest prize, and so on and so on. I guess I'm just never a fan of when the 8th place guy seems to get the rewards of the 3rd place guy somehow by some outside random luck. But again, get off my lawn! Get off my lawn, you stupid kids!
So, David brings up another point. He says, funny, Lusa, and I think you say it, Leahy, our teammates, I think that's how I've heard it pronounced, our teammates IRL, but different on track, and it's kind of weird, really. And that's a good point.
Yep.
Because again, you are not really celebrating the actual team that is doing the work. You are celebrating this fictitious team. You can't say, you know, oh God, what team is he on? I can't even think of it right now, but you can't say the team name and then the actual team they're under.
Right.
Like it maybe could be like a Koth. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just a bunch of
getting back to team orders too. You know, now I was going to say some of this happens in real life, because maybe you were a teammate with somebody. Let's just say that you were with Hendrick, and next year you're with this. But you and Jimmy Johnson really became good friends. So out on
Sweet.
track, are you going to not help your buddy out? Right? You know who you're out there against, and it's like, and I think that those relationships are part of racing. You know, we had a whole show where we talked about respect and reputation, and I think it overlaps into that when you start talking about this like mixed team environment where they might have, you know, non-contractual people they do help out, you know, because they do, because that's the way life is, I guess. It's
Right.
you know, it's kind of fun. I guess this for me is also fun to just play devil's advocate on something that's new, something that's going through growing curves. I hope they listen because maybe other people's opinions might help them shape the future of our esport, which I'm hoping explodes and continues to grow. So I think that's where a lot of this comes from, is that, hey, it is new, and when you do it new for the first time, you're really opening yourself up to others' opinions, you know. So here I am with mine.
Well, you know, there's something to be said about taking, it doesn't mean that you don't like the thing. I just, taking a critical eye to the subject matter, I think is a good idea. If you're always so positive about everything and everything that comes out of your mouth is just positivity about everything, after a while, there's no baseline. There's nothing to say, does this person ever find anything that they don't like? So while we want to be positive about it, it's a good thing for esports, it's a good thing for sim racing. I think taking the devil's advocate approach or looking at things from a different angle or through a different lens allows you to be a little more like, is there the potential for a problem? And if there's a potential for a problem, how do we try to mitigate or stop that from happening?
Right.
So I don't think it's wrong to look at things with a critical eye. I mean, I classify myself as a critic. I'm not a journalist. I'm just some guy that knows what he likes and knows what he doesn't like, and sometimes I can get that opinion out in a decent way so people can kind of understand what I'm saying. Uh, I think it's important. I hear it. We don't need a bunch of negativity. We don't need a bunch of people hammering developers and stuff like that. But we also need to understand that not everything's unicorn and roses.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So I have a topic that kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. We were talking about nerves. We were talking about pressure, how you handle it. I was really focusing on that moment before, you know, since you have your concert tonight, so it kind of tapped into that whole pregame show aspect of nerves. Tofi brought up the question today of how do you deal with those on-track moments, like in the middle of the race, that unnerve you somehow, some way, or upset you, and how do you bring it down? Number one, is it okay to get angry? Like, if you get angry, have you lost control? Have you already failed? And, you know, because I really could argue that. Like, some people might say, hey, I scream, and then I'm right back to zero again. And maybe some other guy thinks he's being really good about it because he doesn't scream, but he's sitting there stewing and brewing about it for 30 or 45 seconds. So again, is it okay to get angry, or is that just, again, have you lost control, self-control, mental control? And then what do you personally do, or do you not do anything? Maybe you don't do anything. Your thoughts on that? I have a few of my own, but your thoughts?
So this is a weird one because I've never gotten actual angry racing like RC cars. I may get a little like, oh, you're going to get what's coming to you kind of thing, but it never like, I never wanted to throw anything, break my remote, nothing like that. Same thing with slot cars. But on the opposite hand of that, we're talking about what we were talking about earlier in the sprint car and running track and cross country. I have gotten angry. I have gotten pissed. I actually bent my steering wheel one time in the sprint car because we were having motor problems, and I'm trying to tell my motor, the guy that builds my engines, this is the problem, and it persisted for like half the season. And I went out for qualifying, and it was a big race. You want to talk about in front of a crowd? It's in front of everybody, and the motor just lays down. You could hear it. The motor just goes, and I'm just like, I was so angry because he swore up and down that it wasn't the thing that I said it was, and it turned out to be that it was. I actually bent my steering wheel. I was hammering it on the way into the pits, and I was so angry. I actually bent the steering wheel. I started carrying 2 steering wheels after that. So, and I've done it where I felt like, I ran a big race and a lap car got in my way, and boy, I chose wrong, got behind the Tim Kading, and we had a yellow, and there was a lap car in between us, and I asked him to go up, go high, because where I was running was low. And so whenever somebody's asked me to do that, I've gone where they've wanted me to go. And this guy didn't. He ran just far enough where you could technically say he gave me room, but he didn't. And I had to make sure I wasn't going to run into him, and it didn't give me a shot. All I wanted was a shot. And I was they're doing, the top 3 park on the front straightaway, and they're doing interviews, and I'm doing everything I can not to just go on a tirade about this guy in front of everybody. And when I got back to the pits, I just walked over to him. I said, I'll remember that the next time you think something cool's going to happen to you, I'll be there to make sure it doesn't. And so it's weird because like in sim racing, I don't feel that way. Even when I get more pissed at like a hardware failure.
Right.
That's what makes me angry is like, you practice all week and you have a hardware failure, like mother. So actual sim racing, I kind of look at it as it's supposed to be fun. And even though I'm competitive, I kind of do the same thing with slot cars. I want a good race. And, sometimes it can be annoying when stuff happens, but I kind of shrug it off and just go, well, that sucked. Right. And just kind of walk away from it. But like I said, on the flip side, I've done it in running where I've actually held grudges with people and like purposely in running, like messed with people.
Right.
You think this is how this is going to work? You're on my course or my track now. You ain't going to do this. So I don't know. And I don't know why that doesn't transfer over for me. I don't know why I don't feel the same like when I'm racing RC or slot cars or sim racing. Like I don't get that, angry about, when things happen like that.
So if you're in a road race, like when we ran Le Mans, for example, and you miss a spot, a corner, and it's going to allow the guys behind you to get a run because you missed it significantly. Does anything go through your head at that moment, or are you just right back to doing what you got to do? Does it faze you that you made that mistake?
No, and I think that's actually more like the big race car. When that thing happened in the moment where the guy kept me from having a shot, I wasn't angry then. I got angry later.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad has always instilled in me, it's if you make a mistake or something happens to you, the best drivers can get mad and upset, but they can also, in an instant, move beyond that, learn from it, and continue to move to the next point. So don't dwell on it while you're racing, while you're in the car. You need to think of the next thing that you've got to do. So when, I'll sit there and go, well, that was a stupid move or something like that, but I'm never like yelling at my monitor or, shaking my fist like, you idiot kind of thing. It
Right.
doesn't, it doesn't do that for me. I'll sit there and go, that hello, hi, I'm here too, kind of thing.
Now, do you think that that's a Billy Strange personality thing, or is this a Billy Strange the racer thing? Like if you were to switch to something else, like playing in a band and something went wrong, um, do you get angry? Do you, or is your persona as a racer trained and honed and different than like? I mean, I'm saying that kind of from my own personal, because I'm about to tell you a little bit about me.
I would say I beat myself up more than anything. I tend to forgive other people's mistakes. So when we play in a band, I tend to forgive other people, band members' mistakes, as long as it's not egregious. Like, okay, that was really stupid. But otherwise, I tend to give them more leeway than myself. So I tend to get angry at myself more than anything. So like if we're playing a show, you have to do the same thing. Attitude is everything. And if you look like nothing happened, even though you effed it up, like
right,
most people won't know.
right.
And then you can beat yourself up about it later. Worst thing you can do when you're playing is like if your drummer makes a mistake and you just turn around,
Right.
do one of those. You can't do that. So everything I think that I have done has made me be angry afterwards and not in the moment, because the moment will make it worse if you hold on to that. And I think that having that ability to recover, whether it's getting upset or making a mistake, putting that out and continuing on is a bigger deal. Like you should, I don't know. I mean, some people it may not affect. I know myself, if I can say in life other things piss me off way more and like ignite me like that than doing this stuff.
Right.
And I think it's because I'm in a competitive or a professional environment that I want to want to do it. So like I will sit there and after I'm done, I will be, it's all part of the reason why I don't like streaming races, streaming me driving.
Uh-huh.
Because that stress from other people when I'm trying to make a salient point about something, or like something doesn't work right. Wow, I froze. Something doesn't work right, irritates me more. That bothers me more than making a mistake actually driving, if that makes sense.
Sure. For you, perhaps it makes sense. To know me, I am 95% mellow, happy-go-lucky, just want to smile and enjoy the day. 95%. And I am 5% rage. And it used to be a worse percentage than that. This is me at 50 plus. I'm down to 5%.
I would say I'm in the same boat.
So when that rage element comes out, I'm pretty bad. I really lose my mind. I see red. I find at those moments, if I break something, that I come back to planet Earth a lot quicker than if I just try to let it dissipate. So all this rage, I used to punch holes in walls kind of rage. And, I used to like keep pieces of wood that were small enough to break without harming me. Because it would allow the release that I wanted. Like a punching bag would work for me. Doing 10 push-ups in a moment of rage would work for me. Like, I get so angry that I need physical reaction to come back down to planet Earth.
See, that doesn't work for me.
But that's only...
I just keep going. I'm just like... I just lose. When I'm actually at the point of losing it, I lose it. Like, it's not pretty. And no amount of breaking things or like screaming, like it just doesn't work. I actually physically have to remove myself from that situation to calm down. And my temper is like you. My temper is way better than when I was in my, teens and late teens and early to mid 20s.
Yes.
Like I've mellowed out quite a quite a bit, which doesn't seem possible, I know, but
I dared to say I wasn't even a likable person until I hit 30 because I was so rage. Anyway, not a compliment, by the way. In racing, I've played with this topic. I worked with Fabio Martin in order to work on breathing and concentration. Even though I never did it, I've always talked about it as long as I've been doing a show. But you'd see the ski racers, in the Olympics, the only time they show ski racing here in America. But, that you'd see them at the starting gate and they'd have their eyes closed and maybe they'd be doing some of this, because they're, they're like turn 3, okay, and they're just going through the whole course in their mind, doing that visualization. And I'm like, I know about and I believe in all of these things, but I've never been able to put them in use for myself. Now, having worked with Fabio, having thought about this, I've tried in the moment of racing, screaming. People kept bringing up Silverstone.
Roar.
Yeah. And I've also tried the don't react, right? Just don't even react at all. I've found that when I don't react at all, that my brain is switching to concentrating on the job. Like I'm less disturbed in that moment with what I'm doing. However, it might hang around in my head a little bit longer than... And now that I have the push-up rule, it's even worse. Because if I screw up a corner and I'm just like, mama, I'll probably be fine by the time I get that out of my head, right? But if I don't do any of that, 3 turns later, I'm still brewing and stinking about that corner. Now, back in the days of karting, thank God I wore a helmet, and thank God go-karts were loud. Because if I even missed an apex, I would be screaming at the top of my lungs. Yes.
I've never done that. I've never done that inside.
Oh. And I'm yelling at myself. And somebody mentioned third person about somebody. I'm yelling at, what the F are you doing, Shaun? Get your head. Oh,
get your head in the game, idiot.
Yeah. I just, I think I would have been better at soccer, cycling, wrestling. I would have been better at racing had I achieved a certain amount of wisdom that took me until 50 to get. Like, I watch soccer now and I'm like, wow, I see more in soccer now than I did when I was a player. I got by on soccer on my ability with foot to ball skills, I'm really pretty fast, my speed and my endurance. It was not my vision of the game. And I wonder if that rage was a blocker. Like one of the reasons I was good at soccer was rage, actually. Like I was a very angry player. But that rage had my head clouded and filled with blood instead of filled with vision of making plays. So when I would do something spectacular, it always came down to just some individual ability to do it. Had nothing to do with the team sport. That sounds like I'm some solo artist on the soccer field. No, it wasn't that bad. But I just looking back on it. I just look back on it and it's like, no, I didn't. And I wonder if the same is true for racing, because I did that at the tail end of my rage years, right before I started to gain wisdom. I was a late bloomer, and it's like, wow, I could have done so much better had I not been screaming and yelling at myself, had I not been so hypercritical of myself and spent all that energy just focusing on breaking point, turn in point, apex, throttle on point, roll out point, and instead of like, where exactly is my braking marker, I'm still screaming, what are you doing? What are you doing? As I blow by a braking zone, getting ready to yell at myself for the next corner because now I'm missing that one too. Anyway, I don't think any of that does well. Tofi, who also brought this up, and I'll switch my image real quick, and then Billy, your last thoughts on this. He said other things that one could do, like you could, get yourself an aquarium simulator for your computer, to...
I like what Mark says. He says, when I get mad about a league race, I just shut everything off and lay on the floor in darkness and silence. Roll up in the fetal position.
I love it.
I can only think of a race that might have happened. Okay, so as you're talking, like I started thinking, like listening to what you're saying. I did have one time we're out at Marysville, and Marysville is a tight quarter mile, and it was everybody's bottom feeder. Everybody's running the bottom because everybody assumed that was the fast way around there. And so we're all real tight. And I had worked my way up to, I think I started like 10th or 11th, worked my way up to 5th. It's only a 20 lap feature race. By lap 10, my soon to be wife was actually ahead of me, got tangled up with another car, and we all got tangled up. So it was like 3rd through 5th or 2nd through 5th, whatever it was. We all ended up in 3 and 4 in a big knot. And so when you do that, you have to start in the back. And she got damaged. She ended up having to retire. I had to go all the way to the back. So I'm starting like, 18th or 19th. And I was so mad because that was the best I'd ever done at that track. And I was so mad. I was just like, I don't care if I take people out. I don't care if I flip my balls off. I said, I am going to the front one way or another in 10 laps. And I drove probably one of the most exciting races I've ever done because I went around the outside of everybody. Everybody's hugging the bottom. And I split cars. We went 3 wide. I was splitting cars in between and the whole thing. I was slamming. I mean, usually I try to get up on the cushion and you try to be smooth. There was no smoothness about it. I'm slamming the cushion. The thing's doing wheel stands coming off the corner and I'm just passing. We get a yellow with like 3 or 4 to go, whatever it was. And I worked my way all the way back up to like, I think 6th or 7th. And we get the green. I go into turn 1 and I spin. And it's a 2 yellow rule. If you bring out 2 yellows, you're done.
Uh-huh.
I keep my foot in it. I do a 360 past the guys going back into 3 that had passed me when I spun out. Anyway, we come to the checkered flag. And I'm passing these guys on the outside. I'm up to maybe back to about 6th or 5th. And this guy comes off of turn 4 underneath me. And I'm not lifting. And he runs over. I should have lifted. I should have. But I was so
But you
irritated.
were not there. That was not part of the. That wasn't an option.
Nope. I was so angry. I was just like, I'm not lifting. And he runs over my left front. His car hops in the air, slams on my nose wing. His right rear slams my nose wing, which slams the nose of the car in the ground, spins me around like this, and the car starts to do a wheel stand going backwards.
Oh my.
And so I stood on the throttle. He's bouncing to the infield the last I saw him. As I'm spinning around, I've got my foot dead in the throttle because as the car starts to do a wheel stand, I'm like thinking it's going to flip over. I'm going to flip over backwards so I've got my foot in the throttle. It does a pirouette basically on the tail tank and the rear tires. At the start finish line, I do a 360 and land the car. And, that was the end of the race. He didn't flip. I thought I made him flip because then I felt bad. I was like, oh, man, that was really stupid. But he didn't flip. And they scored him ahead of me because how our transponders went across they're on the front end. Even though my tail was ahead of his going across the line.
Oh, that's great.
It scored him ahead. And so I get done. The front wing is just smashed. I mean, pieces of it are in the infield and everything. I go idling. I turn around. I go idling around the track because the exit is off of turn 1. And my brother's standing. I'll never forget it. My brother's standing who was my crew chief, is standing at the end or the entrance to the pits. And he stands up there and he just kind of like does this hunker down thing and he like simulates like where the balls were and he just like balls and he's like, where did that come from? Because I think that was like really the first time that I had really gotten aggressive.
Right.
And so I can see he's just laughing. I get in the pits. My dad's with me. We're all laughing. Then he's like, okay, now go grab the front wing that you destroyed on the track. And so I had to like do the walk of shame, go grab all the pieces from the front wing so we could put it back together. But I think that's the only time that I drove like actually angry.
How do you get somebody to turn on the anger? Like I would now argue that I know a lot of really passive sim racers, myself included. And hey, I just want to have a good race. Yes, I have my rivalries, but I just kind of want to get around them and just kind of have them beat by a second and a half or so. But how and when do you flip that switch? You know, because like what you said, there is a lot to be said about the guy who's like, you know what? I am, through rage and determination, I'm going to make this car do what no other man will make it do. Right?
Right. You feel like Superman at that point.
Yes. And you know, I've had those moments, and sometimes they've been rage driven, where I did something wrong, or I was having a bad day on track, and then all of a sudden I just like got angry, but the focused angry, not the rage angry, but the focused angry.
Right.
And I'm gonna drive this thing into that car.
Distinction between the two.
And on those moments, I'm gonna make those passes too. I'm gonna Ayrton Senna. I am gonna get my wheel. I'm gonna be right next to you, and you are gonna have no choice but to take us out, because I am now in position, or you're going the long way around the corner, and I win the next corner. But it's a fine line, because I use the word rage focus, but how far is that from rage out of controlness too? You know?
Well, and maybe there is a difference when things happen to you that weren't your fault that cause anger versus you doing it yourself.
Right.
You know, maybe that's a distinction. I don't know, but yeah, I've never done that. Like what I was describing with the sprint car. I've never done that. And who was it? AV Flashback says, I think that the level of anger depends on the amount of investment you put in. So if you go real racing, you're going to get emotional. You can't hit restart after the guy has put you into the fence, which makes more sense. I think maybe that's, you know.
I remember a endurance race that we had done where, you know, I'm really cautious in the beginning of the races, and I just got pushed back and back and back, because once I was kind of pushed off the driving line, everyone saw, every next car sees me as the victim. And it was like, and then it was getting to the point of ridiculous, like not just giving up a few spots, but hey, now I'm racing against cars that I like don't have the time to be racing against.
Right. You've put yourself in a situation where you become the slower car.
Yeah. And now I'm mad and I have that rage, but I'm in endurance mode where and I guess for me, I do know the difference, like in the moment, like, and I think that might be the first step, is to recognize the moment you're in. Like, what you can do in the last 3 laps of a race is a lot different than what you can do in the first 3 laps of a race.
Sure.
And whether you're talking about being sane or being raged, it's still the same decisions have to come into play. And in that endurance scenario, because of the environment, even though it was the kind of thing that would make me just lose my mind, I could not do that, because there was no room for going into the red at all in an endurance race. Like, I couldn't do it through driving. I couldn't do it through being angry. I couldn't do it from, I'm not letting this guy by. Like, all of those things that I might do in different circumstances couldn't come into play. And so in those moments, even though I have 5% rage that I would argue is uncontrollable by me, I think there is still a certain amount of control, because when really tested in the right environment, I do make the right decision for the most part.
Sure.
And that in lesser moments that I might go ahead with the bad decision because the consequences aren't that significant. So if I'm in a 45-minute race with no prep and I'm like, I'm not letting one more car go by me, it's just a little sprint race. Who cares, right?
True.
But if I took that attitude in an endurance race, A, it would be uncool, and B, it might result in me getting punted by somebody who's like, why is this guy so determined to not let me go by? You know? Right.
You know? Well, yeah. So when you're running a race, then to wrap it up, is the expulsion of noise your release to get you to focus again?
Yeah,
Is
but
that because
yes,
you obviously aren't,
you
if you're
can't
still
break.
running a race, you're not breaking
Nope,
anything, right?
that is breaking. That is as physical a reaction as I can get. Now I do recall pounding on my steering wheel not too long ago. Something happened, and I was just like banging on my wheel because I was really upset about it. So but that's like, in my opinion, now you've gone too far, right? Because number one, you're driving with one hand. You're still
I thought you
racing.
were just asking it for a good time.
Just giving a little smack. Um, so yeah, I would argue, but see, a good outburst, if that does give you a release, because everybody's different. Some people would be like, oh, that's the worst thing I could possibly do. And another person might say, oh, that's exactly what I do. I think that that's acceptable. Now, the problem, again, this gets back to like the beginning topic too. Well, are you alone? Are you in a crowd? Do you live alone? Do you have a
Right.
family? Like if I had a wife and kids and my rage had me in here screaming the way I could, I mean, people might
Let me
call
tell you, it doesn't
CPS.
change as much as you want to think it changes. When I've had issues with things and like, why the is that not? I didn't even change anything. My poor wife and my poor kids hear me like just losing my mind in here, and then I walk out there and I'm like,
My dog will be in the corner
I know,
trembling, and it's like, oh, it wasn't
I
for
know.
you.
My dogs will be like, oh God, what's going on? I'm like, I feel like such an idiot. But it's like at a certain point, it becomes uncontrollable. Or like, my favorite thing, or the least favorite thing, but my favorite thing is when I'm playing like a regular video game out in the living room and they just do some sort of stupid design mechanic that just ruins the game. And I just lose my mind. Why the blank would you do that? Blank, this stupid mother. And she just goes, you wonder where our son gets it. I'm like, I know.
Yep. Yep.
Damn it. I just
Awesome.
but that doesn't usually happen when I'm sim racing though. I'm usually like take a deep breath or go do what like something sarcastic like, hey, okay, I was here too, thanks, kind of thing.
Right.
Or like, well, a good moment was when the force feedback didn't work when we were running Le Mans last year.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been an opportunity for me to just rage on about it, and it was just like my brain just kicked into a different mode. It was just like, nope, I can deal with this. I just got to change my mindset and get used to whatever it is.
Right.
So I don't know. I think whatever, when I was young, my dad had me do in competitive situations just make me think of it differently than like real. Oh, I was trying to change out a sprinkler 2 weeks ago and I was losing my mind outside. I was getting ready to throw tools across the yard because, the water's filling up the hole and I can't get the. Whoa. I was about to keep going with that too. I'm trying to get the sprinkler head down in there and the threads won't grab. And I'm just like, I'm losing I sound ridiculous. I full blown known. I sound like a raving lunatic, but I can't stop myself. And my poor wife is standing there, she's there trying to help me. And she's like, "What you want?" I didn't want your help.
Go away.
Pretty much, did I ask you? Kind of thing. And then afterwards, I'm like, I'm sorry. I should not have lost my temper like that. Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Zero Bandwidth says he's toned down a lot since he started streaming his races. I've had to.
I can understand that.
I don't necessarily. I mean, I don't know. Like I say, I always want to come up with a persona, an alter ego, so that I can actually show people what it would really be like. I think they have an idea. Anybody who's watched Wreckfest probably has a pretty good idea of what it would really be like.
I have to say, one of my favorite things, though, is doing Wreckfest and you are in the field and you have these, it's almost like you have a chemical imbalance because you go from these, like, you are maniacally laughing to, oh, F you, screw you, kind of thing. It is so entertaining. And it just ramps up how much fun that game can be when you're in it.
Oh yes, that's exactly.
I love it.
I think that shows like
Don't
my
change that at all.
no
Please
no.
don't change that.
We need a new Wreckfest day. We'll have to do another Wreckfest session. I wish I could have an automated thing that would just bleep the swear words
Right?
automated. Like just, hey, here's my vocabulary. Bleep these words. Oh, why is it? I'm gonna write that code for OBS, and OBS is free. I'm gonna write that code for something that charges money for it, and be rich.
There you go. AB flashback. Billy, have you ever gotten into a fight after a sprint car race? No, gotten close. And I'm stupid. Like I'm not. It doesn't register. I am not a big guy. You know, I'm 5'7". And these monstrosity of men will come to me, or I will go to the. I've actually hunted those guys out and been like, "What the is your problem?" kind of thing, and it's stupid. I will get hammered. I will get my ass beat. But in that moment, I am just like, it doesn't matter. I am going to tell this person what, or I've had them do this where they come up to me and get in my face, and I'm like, I don't give a, who you are.
Right.
And it's that I've never actually gotten in a physical altercation, though. I've always managed to either diffuse myself or diffuse the situation itself. Because at some point, I usually start getting wisecracky and make a joke and start making people laugh. But in that moment, I am like, I'm losing it because how dare you, come over here, or how dare you do that thing to me on the track? And it's like, I'm not smart. That I would just get hammered. They would full on. I mean, there was a guy, we were racing and I had a terrible qualifying effort, which means I got put way back in a heat race, didn't make it through the heat race. I'm in the back of the B. We're moving forward. And this guy who actually does really well now, Corey Eliason, he ran over my left front. I mean, you did the thing you're not supposed to do, and he was new, but he swung out going into a corner, and you don't do that. And it collapsed my left front. So then I have no brake because the brake's on the left front of the sprint car, and I just, no control. Clear from the top of the track, going into turn 3, across, and I collect this guy, Jason Botsford or something like that. Huge guy. And so when we get collected in the infield, he's staring at me and he's calling me everything. He's literally shaking his car. He's all, F you, what the blank are you doing? He's like shaking his car. And I'm trying to explain like, hey, it wasn't my fault. And pretty soon he just keeps going, which then infuriates me. And I just start giving him the finger, and I'm start screaming back, and I'm like, F you, bitch. And then he gets out of the car, and he is a mountain of a man. And I'm just like, that wasn't smart at all. Oh boy.
Too funny.
Luckily, he went back to his trailer and beat the crap out of his trailer instead of me. But again, not very smart on my part.
Well, and it's sort of funny because a lot of racers are tiny, but a lot of racers are gigantic guys. So it's like you have a pretty big sway.
Yeah, he was not small.
I've never had a pit altercation. In karting, I was pretty lucky in that I never had any incidents that would have led to it other than in practice days, but those were with people I kind of knew. So it was more like, oh, sorry about that, more than what the F are you doing? But I actually got in a couple of fights in my days of soccer. So yeah, I was very hot-headed, and I was a aggressive player. And so I ended up in a lot of altercations, and at least 2 of them ended up in little consequences. So, and I'm not a fighter. I'm not a fighter, by the way. It's just that I don't, your body's writing checks, your fists can't cash. It's like my mouth. It's like, I'm not going to back down to anybody. I don't care. You kick my ass. If I'm in rage mode. Now, when I'm not in rage mode, I have a certain amount of sensibility too. It's like, well, wait.
Oh, yeah. You sit there like, hey.
I'm 160 pounds. You're 220. Yeah, let's not take this one on. But yeah, if I'm in rage mode, I don't care. But if I'm in rage mode, there's a good chance that I could beat up a 220-pound guy, to be honest with you, because I don't think they're expecting the face-tearing off rage that Shaun Cole brings to the table.
The ferocity.
It's like,
becomes the velociraptor.
It ain't even going to be close to a boxing match.
Oh no, I'm gonna fight dirty.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to the ground.
I've got a height disadvantage. I'm gonna
Yeah.
fight dirty.
The only fights I've ever had, I mean, to know me, I'm going to give you my whole secret. If I fight you, it's going to the ground. We are not going to stand there and exchange blows. It is going to the ground, but I'm short and I wrestled, so duh. Anyway, all right, on that note, maybe I have something, there must be something more pleasant to talk about to finish this show off. Tonight, Kentucky. Friday night truck racing tonight. This is supposed to be the last race of the season. But we had that one race. I can't remember what went wrong. Oh, it was after the iRacing build and the Toyotas had nothing. So we threw that race out, and we're going to rerun that next week, I believe. So tonight at Kentucky, 6 o'clock my time if you want to watch it. Billy will not be there, and I'm going to have you tell us where you're going to be one more time. And then this weekend I'm going to have spa practice and maybe an Indy 500 cameo at this point, because it's certainly not going to be a strong showing.
I like that, a cameo.
I'm terrible at Indy too. Just I'll admit that's one of my worst tracks.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's one of those tracks that you can do it great all day, and one mistake is a game ender. So if it's 200 laps times 4 corners, that's 800 apexes that I have to not accidentally bounce with an early apex and bounce off the curving into the outer wall.
Okay.
It's always either turn 1 or turn 3 that gets me.
Well, yeah, I can totally understand that, because that tends, obviously, carrying the most speed going into those parts.
It's usually turn 1, but I've dumped it on...
Yeah, turn 1 always feels awkward. Turn 3 doesn't feel as awkward. Turn 1 really...
Turn 1 throws me...
Yeah.
Especially as I start to get a little tired. And because, again, it's one... That's the thing about Indy. One little tiny mistake could be the end of it. Dave Larry's 6 feet 220. Feels like I'm calling him out in particular. I'll tear your face off, Dave. No.
Then Dave's not here. At some point, like Macho Man Randy Savage should jump out and snap into a Slim Jim.
Oh. So, yeah, and then what else? Lots of reviews and things like that going on. And one more time, what are you doing tonight, Billy? What do you got going on tonight?
I will be over in Sacramento playing at Harlow's. They've got just a handful of tickets left, so looks good that we're going to sell the place out or come really close to it. We're the opening band, so we're not the headliner or anything like that, but it's a good opportunity for us. So hopefully everything goes off without a hitch. I'm pretty excited.
Very cool.
Unfortunately, it's on the same night as a truck race.
Yeah, we'll do another. I'm thinking that for next season, I'd like people's opinions, but I'm thinking that when this truck season ends, we'll do another mini season, but I think it's going to be dirt trucks, and I think we're going to utilize the rally cross courses as well as, instead of what iRacing is just bouncing between the two. Okay. We'll throw the rally cross courses into our mix just to keep it a little more variety, but... yeah, I think we're going to do some, and then I was given thought, the problem with trucks, I love racing them, but what I don't like is if you take the same format as we do with road racing or oval racing, and it's like a one race, that's it.
Yeah.
It's so prone to getting spun that I feel like you almost have to run 2 races of any points night to make it fair for those who might have just gotten taken out in race 1, running in second, got spun out, dropped to 8th.
All things to ponder.
Yeah, so I'm thinking I might do a weird series where it's 2 races per night every other week, and then do that for 12 weeks for 6 races. And that feels kind of casual, but kind of fun. So anyway, always looking for people's thoughts and opinions on what we should do. But with the NASCAR trucks, wrap it up. We'll be looking for our next season of something. Also, I want to look into servers and maybe rent a server so that we can do our own Project Cars or something else. R Factor 2 maybe. And then I need to get back into the Assetto Corsa series. I feel like I haven't done that in a while, so now I'm kind of like, it'd be kind of fun to run an Assetto Corsa for a while because I took a break.
Right.
now I kind of want to go back and play with that for a little while. Anyway, that's all I got today. Anything else on your mind?
I am good. You mentioned R Factor too, but that can be a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
I just found it interesting that they, would change the balance of performance for their race literally days before. And being somebody that has run several different, series, whether it's RC cars or slot cars, that's not something you do. So
Right.
I thought that was
Not at that juncture.
Yeah, I just thought, people put a lot of time and effort into their setups. And I've always been a big believer in you make the rules at the beginning of the season, or whenever, if you're doing a race, you make the rules at the very beginning of the race, and then that's what you live with, and then you make an adjustment.
Right.
So, topic for another day, though.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about that next week. And Frank, yeah, maybe heats and then a final A and B. I'm not sure if you can put that rule package on the trucks. I'll look into it. Probably can. That could be a cool format. Anyway, all right. Well, that's gonna do it for this one, Billy. Good luck tonight. Break a leg. Do you like that wording?
Sure. I'll take whatever I can get.
Have fun and make some big fans out there.
Cross my fingers.
So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for just sitting around talking sim racing for a couple hours and being part of the show. But that's going to do it for this one. Happy Friday. Get out there, do some racing. Have a great weekend, everybody. This is Beyond the Sim. I'm Shaun Cole. That's Billy Strange. And we will see you on the track.
See ya.